Hello, friends. This is Amratansh from Platonic, and I'm back with paper 2 of political science. Some handy pointers for you, which may be useful for tomorrow's exam. The number one thing is that please have no residue, which means that when you are attempting paper 2, start from a very fresh plate. Forget what you did in paper 1. How was the paper? How was the difficulty? Please don't speak to anybody about it. Just focus on what good can you do in paper 2. Again, the objective is to attempt as many questions as possible. Basically, you should target 250 marks and try to write decent content for all the possible questions. That's the first thing. The second thing is that because the nature of the paper is dynamic, it's a bit challenging. You need to use various schools of thoughts, especially in paper 2A. For example, if the question is on security and you are answering it from a liberal perspective or from a realist perspective, try to add different schools. Like, for example, you can mention Barry Buzan's concept of human security. You can also give in the Marxist analysis. And this is true for at least all the concepts, be it gender justice, be it human rights, be it democracy and other global concerns. Try to answer the questions from different perspectives. Now, the second thing is there would be some questions, especially on in paper 2, which you might not have heard of or at least have some rudimentary idea. In those questions, your best guide to answer is use multiple perspectives, at least as to ascertain what you can write. If that is not useful, at least try to answer it from the values perspective. Like, for example, if there's a very broad question on global world order, think of it in terms of what is the implications on democracy. Now, when you talk of democracy, you can also mention liberal democracy of the West, but can also have a different perspective of the Chinese model or the authoritarian model. Right. Now, this is answered while telling democracy. Same is the case of human rights. You can mention Rohingyas, you can mention Uyghur Muslims, so on and so forth. Then also the environmental perspective, terrorism angle, non-state actors. So all these different values and all these different things helps you to construct an answer which can be useful at least in the last moment, right? Now, a lot of you have at least asked me personally and also through various different platforms, like what to do if you don't know enough scholars. Now, the best way to answer is if you know the scholars well and good. If you don't know it, please forget about it. Try to focus on the quality of your argument. And by that, I mean that if you can mention maybe Ministry of External Affairs, well and good. If not, please use the knowledge of general studies which you have. You have already covered a lot, many dimensions for both international relations, all the current happenings. So please use that. And also you can be a bit more creative. For example, if you're not very certain as to what can be the dimensions to a particular problem, think of it in terms of state sovereignty, think of it in terms of global order. So these things can certainly at least add different dimensions to whatever you are pursuing. Like, for example, I'm expecting few questions on globalization, maybe deglobalization, or criticizing globalization through a Marxist lens, right? And similar things can also be written when you criticize the neoliberal state, especially in the COVID times. So keep those things in mind, that when you are mentioning decline of neoliberal state, you can also mention World Economic Forum's global economic reset. And what Klaus Schwab has mentioned, he has criticized the state for putting so much focus on profit sharing that the welfare notion of the state is criticized. This is one point. Now, also, there are certain dimensions which you can open, which can help you. Like, for example, if you want to at least just conclude something, you can always mention that in the post-COVID world, what would the world be like? You can mention about surveillance state or maybe a Leviathan state, wherein the state has a lot of unbridled powers. Then Indo-Pacific can also be a good dimension when you're writing in paper 2B, because this is a new theater of global politics, which you can certainly mention. Also, if it's not explicitly mentioned in your analysis, be it paper 2A or 2B, you can always mention the global order. You can also mention US, China, the Pax Sinica, Pax Americana, these kind of things, just to show that you are thinking of a global perspective. The regional dimensions of FTAs, global dimensions. So all these things, and also global governance deficit. While you mention institutions like United Nations, WTO, so on and so forth. So that said, ultimately, then in the last, I would just say that you should also again focus on your presentation, which I already discussed in the last video. And last but not the least, go with a killer mindset that you are going to make things happen. And it's ultimately your mindset which is going to make you victorious. So all my best wishes to you. Just go out there, attack and conquer. That's it. All the best.